In this video, I'll show you how to paint these two paintings of daisies and cornflowers. If you want to loosen up your painting style, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. I start by making a few loose pencil marks. I'm mixing my own green from yellow and blue, and I want to create a very wet and loose kind of wash of paint. This is where I get to really splash paint around and have fun using big brushes, or you can use sponges also, and just using the paint and letting it run and mingle on the page itself. I like to thin my paints with water, but I also sometimes use matte medium or gloss medium to thin. You can also use a mixture of the two. This is the type of painting where you can really experiment with color mixtures and different ways of adding mediums to see what happens. My best tip for this stage of the painting is to avoid making your colors too dark and also use thin layers. Here I actually added a bit too much fluid, so I'm kind of dabbing it off with some kitchen towel. And as you could probably tell, I'm using relatively small amounts of paint here because I want the lightness of the paper to kind of shine through the paints and then slowly build up layers. Here I'm using the opposite end of my brush to pull some of the paint. It's still wet, so I can kind of pull it or drag it onto the upper part of the painting. And this is going to illustrate grass or stems from the flowers. And a bit more splashing of paint. This is where you can really let loose. It's a lot easier to be brave and to try things at the beginning stages of your painting. So go ahead and give yourself permission to splash and really get a bit wild with your paints. Now my paint surface has mostly dried, and I want to drop in some yellow color. This is some acrylic ink that I had on hand, but you can also use some just regular acrylic paint. Make it a consistency where you can kind of spatter with it. I chose kind of a warm yellow color to make sure that I could see it against the green colors in my painting. My dropper, the pipette in the bottle is broken, so I kind of have to spatter many times with this one. And now I'm just dabbing off some of the ones I don't want to keep. But it's a good way to kind of splash them on to give it that kind of random feeling that you would see in wildflowers growing outdoors. And while the yellow color is drying, I want to work a bit on the sky. I have a cobalt blue that I'm going to mix up with some gloss medium to make it more transparent. And I'm kind of making a glaze actually like this. And if you're interested in learning more about glazing with acrylics, you can take a look at a video I did on that. I'll link to it at the top of your screen. I want to drop in a bit of this blue color in the sky, and I'm dabbing off some of the color also because it's getting a bit too dark and too blue for my taste. And now I want to take that cobalt blue. This time I haven't added any medium or thinned it with water. I'm just using it as is. And I'm making some blue dabs of paint here and there that's going to indicate the cornflowers that I want in the painting. Again, no details necessary. I'm just going for the overall kind of shape of the cornflower, and I'm also holding the brush kind of on the middle of the handle, so I'm not very tight. I'm not making very tight details. And now for the part I've been looking forward to. I want to add the petals of the daisies, and I'm not actually using a whole lot of paint on my brush, but you want to make sure you use a good quality white paint, one that has a very good coverage, and then you try and do each petal in one stroke at a time. You start and you make the stroke and you leave it. It's difficult to not go on and back in and start messing around with it, but try to make each stroke count and then leave it. It gives a more kind of loose and natural feeling to the flowers. For a more natural look, make sure you make the flowers a bit different. Some of them could be larger, closer to us, and some can be a bit further away, and we would paint them smaller. Also, as you can see in the reference photo, some of the daisies are facing us and some of them are kind of facing upwards. And it's good to kind of mix it up and have the flowers seen from different sides. I made a mixture of titanium white and some gloss medium, and I'm just going to soften some of the edges of the clouds and the sky to give an even softer feel. To make the daisies stand out even more, I'm going to add some darker colors around the daisies. So I'm mixing up some shades of blue and blue-green to add around the colors, kind of where there might be some shadow, and adding some darker colors around the white petals will make them stand out more. Again, try and keep the brushwork loose and not draw kind of with your pen with your brush around the each petal. Instead, kind of dab your paint around and change the angle of your brush as you're putting it on the paper. This will again make the painting appear looser and more expressive. At this stage, it's very easy to just continue adding details and more details. So try and be aware that you stop kind of in time if you want the loose feeling in your painting. a few less details now with a woody pencil, or you can use a watercolor pencil also. Just going to make a little bit darker, kind of a shadow on the center part of each daisy to make them a bit more 3D. I want to add a few dabs of lighter cobalt blue shade, just a few dabs here and there on my cornflowers. Using a watercolor pencil, I'm just drawing in some marks with in and around the flowers in a few areas that I want to emphasize. Again, I'm reminding myself to not keep going. I really need to take it slow and look at where I want my marks and then do them. I realized I want a little bit more contrast, some darker colors over here to make those daisies stand out even more. I keep using those thin layers of paint, and I keep my brush kind of moving around on the painting and from painting to painting. It's good to keep the brush kind of moving around to, again, not get caught up in one flower, for example. It's easy to kind of get caught up in wanting to make one flower maybe perfect, and then we want to finish that before moving on to another one. If you're continually kind of moving around and trying to see the painting as a whole, it will help you out a lot in achieving looseness and expressiveness. I really enjoyed painting these loose daisies, and I hope it was a helpful video for you also. If you're interested in more tips on painting loose, check out the description below for a link to my free guide on how to paint looser and more expressively. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.